Good morning, everyone. It is November 26th, 2019. We are 30 days away from Christmas. How about that, huh? 29 days. I should be more precise. 29 days till Christmas, and you are probably anticipating some sales coming up. You have the Black Friday sale that's going to be happening in a couple of days. Then you have Cyber Monday sales that are going to start probably on Sunday. And then you have Christmas. And during this entire time period, you will have plenty of opportunity to buy new audio gear because it will be on sale. Some sales are going to be insignificant, like drop, and then some sales are going to be very significant. And you will see a $50 to $100 reduction in some items. In fact, it might be a good time to buy things used, in fact, because the market is going to be saturated with a lot of things that are going to be a little bit slightly more expensive than used ones, in which case you can probably negotiate getting the used product a little bit cheaper. Because you could say, hey, look, you're asking for $300 for this pair of headphones, but brand new, it's $350 on sale, so I can pay another $50 and get it brand new with warranty, but I will buy yours for $250. And sometimes that works out. Sometimes you end up saving yourself $100 on an item that's barely used, just because somebody needs that money. But before you get there, you need to know what thing you need to buy, and that's why we are here. Today's test is going to be the conclusion of the comparison between the LCD-1 and the Hifiman Sundara. We've already taken care of the bass and the mids yesterday, and this morning we're going to take care of the treble response. So, what's the difference between the treble of these two headphones? Now, I have a suspicion, because I've been listening to these headphones for a while, and my suspicion is that the Hifiman is going to be a little bit more treble-friendly than the LCD-1. But we're going to go through our test and find out if that is actually the case. So we have 3 songs queued. We have Scherzo For X-Wings, Flight from the City, and New Light. Each song has an A and B. A will always be LCD-1. B is always going to be the competitor, in this case, the Hifiman Sundara. So we have both headphones plugged into an AB switch, which is itself plugged into the Monolith Desktop AAA amplifier. Currently, it's at negative 25 decibels. I have the LCD-1 on my head, and we are going to start with Scherzo For X-Wings. Here we go. No harshness at all when the music first starts, even though there are strong brass instruments that chime in immediately. I'm going to increase the volume to negative 20. And there's no harshness. You could hear that peaky valleys. They're peaky, the peaks, not peaky valleys. The peaks have been chopped off because there's a zero harshness from the horns and the brass instruments. Even at negative 20, which is loud, it's so loud I can't hear myself speak. There is a clear claustrophobic feel with these headphones. It's such a narrow soundstage. So you don't get the experience like you're listening to it in the theater. You're not listening to the orchestra live. That's not the sensation I'm getting. Instead, it's like there are decent bookshelf speakers in my bedroom. That's all they sound like here. I'll increase to negative 15. And negative 15 is very loud. Nobody should listen to this song at this volume. And even at negative 15, there is no harshness. There is a clear roll-off of the treble frequency well before those harsh frequencies come into play. There's a clear smoothing effect created with these headphones. I'm trying to find the different tonalities, and the problem is because of that smoothing effect, a little bit of melding occurs with the various instruments. So you have a group that's the percussion, you have a group that's the brass, you have a group that's the string, etc., etc. When everything is played together, it sounds a little bit muddy, especially when you're talking about the brass and the percussion. When it's just one group set playing and then everybody else is quiet, you can hear them, obviously, that's not an issue. The real issue, however, is that this song, orchestral mixes have obviously a lot of individual instruments in a group. and they're all placed somewhere in this recording room. Now, you know this from experience. I'm not trying to belittle you. All I'm saying is this. When you have a band of 4 people, they're all sitting in a medium-sized room, essentially, and they're all playing. They're not like on stage, but with an orchestra, you need a very large room to accommodate all of them, and you still need to have them placed as they would be placed on stage. So you have, however the conductor wants them placed. You could have the percussion on the left and closer to the door, and you could have the wind instruments a little bit closer to you, near the center of the room. You could have the drum all the way in the back, as far back as possible, inside a closet. I mean, you could have a placement anywhere and every which way you want. And so there should be a placement of instruments in the recording that you can hear where it is. It's not just left and right, but it's left back, left forward, a little bit faded in the background somewhere. It's behind everything. Really good recordings are able to do that. Now you might say, look, you're listening to Spotify, and so that's not a good recording. Okay, yes, I understand it's not the highest quality recording, but for purposes of doing just an A and B test, we are trying to figure out what the baseline is. And so for right now, I can say that the LCD-1 does not have placement of instruments. Instead, it just sounds left and right. There's no 3D effect. It's not as if I can say, oh my goodness, it sounds like it's to my right and a little bit further back behind me. That's not the sensation at all. So that's the other problem with this headphone. The narrow soundstage and the fact that you can't really place instruments in a mix. In pop songs, hip hop, all that sort of stuff, that's not really an issue. But for orchestral pieces, it tends to be, because orchestral music, I think, at least in my preference, requires a bit of air, a little room and separation. There's a little bit of melding, as I said, with some of the frequencies. It's not clear when everything is playing. It's more closed off, a little bit muddy. You could say it's a bit intimate, but I've heard intimate headphones before. I would say the Neumann NDH-20 is intimate. The LCD-1 doesn't have that sort of presentation, but it does sound a little claustrophobic, a little closed off. Certainly not as wide as an open back pair of headphones, I think, should be. So quite average. All right, so let's switch to the Sundara. And we are currently at -15. I'm going to leave it at -15 to begin with, and then we're going to increase the volume because the Sundara need more power. Okay, here we go. Yeah, I'm going to increase to -5. -5 is essentially what -15 was for the LCD-1. No harshness, even with the brass and the percussion. So this is about, maybe -5 is a little quieter than the -15 on the LCD-1, so I'm going to increase to -2. That seems to be about the right volume. Definitely more soundstage, noticeably more soundstage. Sounds more airy. And I'm getting a little bit more treble energy, the Sundara, than the LCD-1, but still not harsh to my ear. It gets a little close to my threshold, but it's not there enough for me to say it would hurt me. It's still in a comfortable level. It's easier to find placement of instruments here. It's not just left and right. It's left and close, right, and a little bit further away. A little bit behind me, some instruments are. Good separation between the brass and the wind instruments. I can actually hear both separately as they're both playing. Same thing with the brass and string instruments. Did I just say string instruments? Brass and percussion. Yeah, so there's a little bit better separation occurring with the Sundara versus the LCD-1. And that's partly because there's more soundstage for the Sundara, even if it's just a slight amount. If it's 10%, that means 10% more ability for the headphone to separate some of those frequencies, especially in a complex mix like Scherzo. So once again, we're back to the same thing, which is the tonality doesn't change a whole lot between these two headphones. The LCD-1 has a noticeable smoothing effect, and the Sundara has less of that smoothing effect. Now, the treble doesn't get ear-piercing, it doesn't get harsh on either of these, but I think that the Sundara has a little bit more energy in comparison to the LCD-1. So that treble energy comes out just a tiny bit ahead than the LCD-1. Where the LCD-1, you could keep cranking it up to the max volume until the drivers die, and you won't get these things peaky, at least not to me. I know some people have complained that there's a bit of treble harshness. I don't hear it. Maybe it's just the songs that I'm playing. But with the songs that I am playing, I can tell you I've never yet heard a harsh note out of the LCD-1. It's so smooth, which is great for just easy listening, but not so great for critical listening. And if you're the type that just likes to listen to your music, not for mixing and mastering, but you like to listen to your music with a little bit more energy, a little bit more air, then the Sundara really is the one out of these two that provides that just a tiny bit more of both. All right, so let's go to the next song. We're going to switch back to the LCD-1. I'm going to bring back the volume to -25. Okay, we're back at -25, and we are moving on to Flight from the City. Here we go. There's that creaking of the seat the pianist is sitting on. I've mentioned this every time I've listened to the song. There's a creaking because he's moving back and forth on that bench, on that seat. In the LCD-1, when we did the treble test originally on it, he presented that creaking noise, but muted and really muffled. It's the same thing here again. There should be kind of an electric buzz under everything, and I'm not hearing the electric buzz. I mean, if everything gets quiet, then it comes up, but it sounds really muffled. When it ramps up in volume, you can hear it, but it sounds thick and a little undetailed. So the electric buzz is supposed to be popping and sizzling, and I'm not hearing popping and sizzling throughout this song. It should be present there underneath all the other instruments. And it is only audible under two conditions. One, if nothing else is playing, or two, the volume of that popping and sizzling is brought up, but you just hear like that. You don't hear the pop and sizzle that really is the detail and that distortion effect that just mixed in. I'm going to increase to -20. I don't hear any harshness, no peakiness. The piano sounds like it's being played in a medium-sized room, like in your living room. There's not a whole lot of air to this. So when the song is playing, when the piano is playing, you kind of get this muffled sound signature. If, for example, if you've ever if you ever stood, let's say, 5 feet of a piano in a living room, and you take 20 steps back, and nothing else has changed in the room, you might get a different effect, and you might hear the notes a little bit cleaner and clearer. If you were standing within 5 feet of a piano in a very large room, that would probably do a similar effect. And you may only need to move back 5 feet more, so 10 feet instead of being 25 feet away to get the same experience. Well, it feels like with this piano, I wish the headphones were 5 to 10 feet further back, because the piano frequency is a little thick. It's imprecise in that I'm not getting the details from each piano key. Then each piano key sounds muffled when it's being pressed down, and there's a little bit of melding of each note instead of preciseness with each note. Okay, so let's switch to the Sundara. I'm going to increase the volume to -20 to begin with. -10, not -20. And we're going to restart. Here we go. -10 sounds about the same as -20-ish on the LCD-1. Definitely more air, more soundstage. I can tell you immediately that the piano sounds much less muffled than on the LCD-1. It's a noticeable difference. Every time that the pianist hits down on the keys, it's not a hum, hum, hum. It's not like there's this weird muffling thing. It's a little bit sharper presentation. It's a thump, thump. A bit cleaner, a bit more separation. I can hear that low distortion. I can actually hear the pop and sizzle that wasn't easily audible on the LCD-1. There's good separation between the piano and the string instrument, the cello. There was decent separation on the LCD-1, but there was a bit of melding, and I think that the Sundara has just a tiny bit better separation between those two instruments. It's not night and day, but it's noticeable in an A and B test. The biggest thing, other than the soundstage, is just how airy the Sundara sound in comparison to the Audeze. And this is what I would say sounds like, being 10 feet, 15 feet back from the piano, right? I mean, with the LCD-1, it just sounded like you were right up there in its business, 5 feet within its business, and you're like, this is really muffled for me. I'm not really getting the character of the piano. And if you move back 15 feet, that character might change for you because it'll give an opportunity for the notes to resonate through the room and get to you. It's a fraction of a second longer, but it gives it enough time to dissipate. You're not right there. And so that extra 15 feet is what I'm hearing with the Sundara. It's a bit more air. It's a little bit cleaner. It's a little bit more precise. The stuff that the LCD-1 simply can't do. Very smooth, no harshness, no peakiness, no treble spikes. So for this song, I would say that both sound, tonally, they sound practically the same. I don't hear any harshness. The biggest difference is instead the separation of instruments and the placement, like how far away it feels like you are from the piano. The LCD-1, like 5 feet of the piano in a medium-sized room. The Sundara, like you're about 15 to 20 feet away from the piano, nothing else has changed. And so it sounds a little bit more open, a little bit more airy, and frankly, a little bit more precise because you are giving it time for that frequency to dissipate to you, to resonate to you. And it doesn't sound so thick and in your face like the LCD-1 does. No harshness, no peakiness with either headphone. I think that the smoothing effect is done to certain frequencies, and it's not really being deployed on this song. So that's why I said they're fairly close in tone. Good. All right, so let's go to our last song. And our last song is one that I really do like using because I found a gold standard. Let me bring the volume down first to -25. So New Light by Kazuki has lots and lots and lots of detail. Layers and layers of detail. You've got kids playing in the background. They should be all the way in the back. They're somewhere in the distance. A lot of headphones present that detail as muted and muffled. Really excellent headphones, whether it's cheap headphones or really super expensive headphones, it doesn't matter. Really good headphones present that noise of the kids as if it's out in the distance. It doesn't sound muffled or muted. It just sounds like it's out in the distance. There's a depth involved. Then there's the crunching of the dry grass underneath the person's foot as he's walking. There's the first 3 steps to go crunch, 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 and it goes from the right ear cup to the left ear cup and a little further forward. Some headphones take that sound. You can hear the first one crunch, and then the next 2, crunch, crunch, you hear in the left ear cup, but it doesn't sound left and forward, not like it's moved up a bit. It just sounds like it's on the left side now. So there's no depth in that respect. There are 16 footsteps that I counted with the best headphone for this song so far, and that was the Focal Clear. I counted 16 footsteps from 0 to 45 seconds. That is the gold standard. And so that's the standard we're going to judge these headphones with. Within 45 seconds to a minute, how many footsteps can I count with both of these headphones? But the first step is to listen and to determine what the details are. Then we're going to go back and try to count the number of steps. All right, so let's go to New Light. We have the LCD-1 on my head. Here we go. So maybe we should play it. Okay, no harshness, no peakiness. The kids sound a little muted, but they do sound a little bit distant, not muffled, just a little bit muted. So it's not a true depth effect. It just sounds like its volume has been turned down on that particular detail. There's a piano, and it just sounds a little muffled. There's a synth music that when the piano is playing with the synth music, there's a bit of rubbing shoulders, and you get a tiny bit of muffled effect from that. I'm going to increase the volume to -20. I hear the wind rustling through the blades of grass. Now I hear the guitar. The guitar and the synth really don't interact very well. In fact, with the synth, the guitar is overpowered. And now you have multiple elements in the mix. You've got the synth that's ramped up to max. You have the guitar. You've got, I think, a violin or a cello playing. And with all those things playing, the guitar sounds a little muffled and definitely subdued. It's audible, but it's hard to get through all that other stuff. Okay, now let's go back to 0 seconds. And we're going to count from 0 to 1 minute. I'm going to just count 1, 2, 3, 4. Whenever I audibly hear a footstep. I'm not going to do, maybe it's a footstep. I'm not going to do, I know there's a footstep there, but I didn't hear it. I'm not going to count those. I'm only counting the ones I actually hear. Okay? So here we go. We're at -20 decibels. One, 2, 3. 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. So 7 within 1 minute. The gold standard is 16 within 45 seconds. So I gave it more time to get more footsteps. But I'm going to give it to him. You know what? I'm fine because we're talking about a $1,500 headphone that has exceptional detail versus $400 headphone. So I'm happy to get the additional 15 seconds. Here's the thing, though. It still fails. We're talking about mid-range here, mid-level. 7 footsteps. And I have to tell you, 2 of those 7 footsteps was a hard call for me because I wasn't sure if it was really a footstep or just the sound of crashing waves. I couldn't tell. I gave it the benefit of the doubt because I thought I heard crunching of grass. So I gave those 2 extra. So it could be between 5 and it could be between 5 and 7. That's what it could be. It's definitely hard to hear the footsteps. It's so muffled. The first footstep is clear. The second and third footsteps are less clear. And then after that, it's just a guessing game. Like, where is it? You know, if you've heard this song on good headphones, you know that there's plenty of footsteps here to count. and you're just waiting. I was just waiting for them. Like, where is it? That's not detail retrieval. That's just mediocre retrieval, frankly. All right. Excuse me. Let's switch to the Sundara, and let's see how the Sundara perform. I'm going to do the same exact thing. I'm going to increase the volume to -10. And here we go. All right. There's definitely more air to the song. I can hear the footsteps. I hear the kids in the background. And you know what? The kids don't sound muffled like they did on the LCD-1. They actually sound distant, like they're in the background somewhere. I hear that synth music. I hear the piano. The piano sounds distant instead of close to you and muffled. Definitely more air, as I spoke of, more soundstage. It's not an exceptional difference in soundstage, but it's absolutely noticeable in an A and B test. The piano doesn't sound distorted. Neither does the guitar, which is noticeably different from the LCD-1, which does have a bit of muffledness, a bit of distortion with both instruments. Even as the synth is ramping up, the guitar remains quite audible and distinct. And any second now we're going to get the synth at max volume. Now it's at max volume. And I could still hear the guitar. It's definitely overpowered by the synth, just like the LCD-1. But it's easier to hear on the Sundara than it was on the LCD-1. Just a minor change in difference. So it's not a huge difference between these two when everything is playing and you're listening for the guitar. But because that's slightly larger soundstage, a bit more air, it's a little bit easier to hear the guitar. Not a huge difference. No harshness, no treble, peakiness. This sounds like you're listening to... This gives you the emotion. If we're going to talk about emotion, we're talking about a song that's supposed to evoke that you're outside in a large field with nature. And the Sundara tend to provide that sort of experience emotionally, at least for me. The LCD-1, not so much. The LCD-1 makes it sound like I'm sitting in my bedroom listening to, okay speakers. It doesn't quite have that sensation because of the lack of soundstage. That's if you're talking emotion, that's how it evokes to me, but that's going to be an individual assessment. Let's talk about the actual detail retrieval with the footsteps. We're at -10 decibels. I'm going to increase to about -8 so I can get about the same type of volume that the LCD-1 was at. And let's start going. 0 to 1 minute. One, 2, 3. Clearly audible. 4, 5. 6, 7. 8, 9. 10, 11, 12. Okay. 12. That's what I heard with the Sundara. Now, just as with the LCD-1, there were a couple where I thought, I don't know if that's the wave or if that's actual footstep. I thought I heard crunching. So 2 of them I also gave just because I gave that to the LCD-1. So the playing field is basically level. Regardless, whichever one you want to do, if you want to take 2 footsteps away from the Sundara, then you're back down to 10. If you just want to give 2, then you're up to 12. Regardless, we're talking about demonstrably more information, a little bit more detail that comes out from the Sundara than the LCD-1. 7 footsteps maximum that I heard within 1 minute on the LCD-1. 12 footsteps maximum that I heard from the Sundara within 1 minute. So there's more detail there that can be retrieved. This is not the best. Neither of these is the best. Neither of them really come close to being the best. But the best gold standard being the Clear, providing all of that detail, clear, crisp detail. Nevertheless, between the LCD-1 and the Sundara simply present that detail cleaner, more crisp, and therefore I can hear the footsteps more easily than I did on the LCD-1. Okay, so let's talk about conclusions. I think that the LCD-1 is a fine headphone for casual listening. If you like to have smoothing effects, if you like to have music that never gets peaky, if you want a more warm sound presentation, more warm being a little bit more closed off, then the LCD-1 is a good pair of headphones for that. But you can do just as good with cheaper, I think, if you want a little bit more detail, a little bit more air. And I'm not talking about night and day difference here. I'm talking about noticeable, just a little bit more, and slightly better separation. Then the Sundara have to be the one that trumped the LCD-1 in a head-to-head comparison. It's hard for me to say that the LCD-1 does anything better than the Sundara. And sometimes it's hard for me to say that the Sundara do anything better than the LCD-1. For the most part, they're fairly close to each other. You're splitting hairs. For the vast majority of time, we do our test. But for the things that really do matter, they do matter a lot. The separation of instruments is noticeably better on the Sundara more often than on the LCD-1. The detail retrieval is slightly better on the Sundara than on the LCD-1. The soundstage is noticeably better on the Sundara, wider than on the LCD-1. Once again, we're not talking about huge differences, but we're talking about noticeable differences. And so your question has to be, when you're choosing between these two headphones, what sound signature do you really like? Do you like the smoothing effect that Audeze presents? And if you do, great, then you have an option. On the alternative, you may say, I don't really want all that smoothness. I want a little bit more detail, and I want a little bit more air in my songs. Then the Sundara, by comparison, would be the better option of the two. I think that the LCD-1 is a good headphone, but I think there's a lot of gimmick and a lot of unnecessary hype behind it. For $400, I would expect more, especially with the type of commentary and conclusions I have read from audio engineers. I don't know how to explain this except to say that the LCD-1 is mediocre. It doesn't do anything better than any other headphone that I've heard. And it's certainly, in a head-to-head comparison with the Sundara, the next competitor, it doesn't do anything better. It doesn't overwhelm the Sundara and say, oh my goodness, I can't believe I would ever consider the Sundara over this. That's not the expectation. Yes, there are tonal differences between the two headphones, and so that will be a driving factor for some. And that's what it really comes down to. The tonality doesn't change a whole lot, but what is different may be the feather on the camel's back, straw on the camel's back, to change you, to sway you one way or the other. I think my personal subjective opinion about the LCD-1 versus the Sundara is that for more critical listening, and just a tiny bit more critical listening, the Sundara, because of that extra soundstage and slightly better detail retrieval. For comfort listening, that's a toss-up. I think that the LCD-1 has this warmer presentation and noticeably smoother presentation across the frequency range that might be helpful for people who are treble sensitive, or for those who just really want a smooth headphone. The LCD-1 probably does that better than the Sundara. But the Sundara is no slouch for comfort either. I think the Sundara do present music in a considerably smooth fashion. Some people say the Sundara is harsh. Some say that it's too peaky for them. That's fine. My experience has not been that. I think that Sundara do in fact present music smoothly, just not as smooth as the LCD-1. But then again, you got to know what you like. Whether you want that smoothness minus the soundstage, minus the detail. That's up to you. I hope that this has been of some help. We are going to continue comparing the LCD-1 to other headphones. If you like what I do, you enjoy my channel or any of my content, please consider donating to me a couple of bucks a month on Patreon. Even just $2 a month would help me a lot to keep saving money and buy new and old products that I can test and review for you. If you watch my channel on a regular basis or you just like what you see now, maybe you'll consider subscribing. I'd like to keep going up that subscription number until the end of the year and see where we get. If you have any comments, please leave them in the comment section below. If you want me to review a particular product that I currently own, hey, there's a description section down below, and in that description section you have a product review form link. Click on that, fill it out, submit it, and I'll get to your request as soon as I can. I hope that all of you have a wonderful, amazing rest of your week. If you celebrate Thanksgiving, then I hope that you all have a fantastic Thanksgiving, very peaceful. And if you don't celebrate Thanksgiving, then I hope that you all have a fantastic end of your week. And that you all have a great time shopping on Black Friday and Cyber Monday, because that's where the fun really happens. I hope that all of you take care, and we will talk again soon.